That was a good case to try. The ones that still sort of bother me was on my watch that Jimmy Alpha was kidnapped in Oakland County,
absolutely.
out there at the Red Fox, in I think that was Bloomfield. And then, of course, in the mid-70s, 76, 77, were the 4 children in Oakland County who were kidnapped and killed.
The blue AMC Gremlin?
Well, I always thought that was a red herring.
Killer?
I always thought that was a red herring.
Really?
But the 4 kids were kidnapped and murdered. But they weren't murdered. I mean, they were alive for a week or 10 days. So somehow this kidnapper had a way to stash him and then kill him after he had his way with him. So that was a terrorizing era in Oakland County. Every mother walked their child to school and was there to pick him up. It was sort of a mental and physical lockdown in this county, and that crime was never solved.
It was never solved. Do you have any theories about what could have
I got
happened?
a lot of theories, but not it's about worth what you paid for them.
Yeah.
I think whoever was doing it could have been some young man that the parents said, all right, rather than report him to the police, let's put him in an institution. The public's protected, and yet he's going to get better care. Or maybe he was killed in another incident, maybe locked up in another state. It was so many, and we checked out all those theories. That blue gremlin you mentioned, some woman recalled seeing a blue gremlin in a parking lot near the drugstore where Timmy King was kidnapped, and so we spent months chasing blue gremlins, and I think it was a red herring.
What about no plea bargains? Was that part of your campaign?
Yes, it was.
In 72 and onward through the 70s?
Yep. I ran against Plunkett, and Tom was a fairly liberal Democrat who did not like the penalties associated with possession of drugs. If you're in possession of drugs, or if you sold drugs, that's even worse, you were a 20-year minimum. Well, I checked 2 departments, the Pontiac Police Department and the Narcotic Enforcement Team, and I checked 300 arrests for sale of drugs. Everyone got a deal, plea bargain, because Tom didn't want to invoke the penalty. So that was the theme of my campaign. You elect me, prosecutor, I'll be tough. I won't plea bargain with drug pushers. I got elected, plea bargain ended with drug pushers. It worked. People said, oh, you're going to back up the courts. It didn't. In fact, it actually accelerated because people knew there was no plea coming, so we dealt with it on the first court date. So then I went to armed robberies. And then I went to B&Es because people were defenseless in their home. And then we added people on probation or parole because they already had a bite of the apple. So we continue every year to expand the no pleas as far as I thought was reasonable. But I'm guessing now 60, 70% of the criminal cases were in what we call a no plea policy.
So you were reelected in 76. You remember anything about that campaign?
In 76, the guy who was a friend of Tom Plunkett's, who had endorsed me for the job, he was so upset that I beat his friend that he ran against me. That was Tim Dinan.
Okay.
And Tim was a friend of mine, and so I survived.
But you won that one fairly easily.
Fairly easily, and then I've led the ticket ever since.
Now, 78 comes along, and you decide you're going to run for the United States Senate.
That's when Griffin gave it up.
Very curious situation where Bob Griffin in 77 said, I quit, I'm not going to run again.
I can no longer be effective. It's time for a younger man. He just kept stabbing himself.
Right. And all these other people said, okay, we'll run to take his place, including you, but the others all backed out. But you said, to heck with it.
Well, it happened after about 9 or 11 months, whatever it was. It's a little foggy now. Yeah. Griffin got back in.
I know.
I'm sure at the insistence of Milliken.
Right.
Got back in, and so the other candidates are all good guys, George Roche and some of the other fellows around town. They dropped out.
Right.
And I said, this is crap. I'm not getting out of this race. And so it was me against Griffin. I knew he was a former Senate Majority Leader. What were my chances? But it was more on, I think, on stubbornness on my part, because I just wasn't going to just be that easily pushed around by the powers behind closed doors.
Okay, now I think, if I'm not mistaken, that Bob polished you off pretty easily in the primary.
Oh, not so bad. I mean, it's like 60-40. I think it should have been a whole lot worse than that. I'm an upstart prosecutor going statewide against a former Senate Majority Leader, and he can only beat me by 20 points. I thought it was respectable.
But a lot of what you said against him was actually used by Carl Levin in the fall.
I ran around and I had 50 people go around the state, the 50 biggest cities, and we stood on the corner and said, if you can tell me what the number 211 stands for, we'll give you $211. Well, I think it was a Carl Levin aide who knew. Other than that, nobody knew the answer. 211 was the number of roll call votes that Bob Griffin missed when he said he no longer was going to be involved, could be effective. He hated that.
Well, now, did you really want to be a U.S. Senator? Were you getting a little bored with being prosecutor at that time? You've been
No,
prosecutor
but I always
6
thought I
times.
had the talent to do something on a bigger stage. I still have that feeling, but I'm not going to try it more. I told the audience I'm born in '39, so what's that make me 46? But I thought always.
Well, you ran 3 times for statewide office in the space of 4 years, and you've never run since.
Well,
because you ran.
oh yeah, but the third one you can't count that.
Well, that was Attorney General.
But
you know, they persuaded you.
Oh yeah, Dick Haley.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute. We'll get to that in a minute. But in '80, Reagan is running against Carter, and you're running for a 3rd term as prosecutor. So what happened then?
I won, and
Right.
Reagan won.
Right. It's 1982. Governor Milliken is not running again after 14 years, and you are running for governor. You had 3 major opponents, 2 really big ones, Jim Brickley, Lieutenant Governor, and Dick Headley, and Jack Wellborn, State Senator from Kalamazoo. So what happened in that race from your perspective?
I did very well in the Tri-County area where they knew me.
Absolutely. You won the big 3 counties.
Yeah.
You won
But
Wayne, Oakland, McComb.
The more you went out state, the less my name ID was a factor, was a benefit for me.
Yeah.
I remember getting a call from, I believe it was a Rotary up in Traverse City. And that's a big club, as you know. I think they got 700 members. They hit oil. They're into philanthropy. It's a big club. And they called me and said, "You want to come up and speak?" I said, "Oh, heck yes." I mean, that's the biggest club in Michigan. So I jumped in the motorhome with 2 or 3 of my aides, or supporters actually, and we drove up to Traverse City. And in the old days, back in 81, 82, I think there was only one hotel in town. That was the Holiday Inn. So we drove into town, and we're coming around the curve, and there's the marquee, and it says, "Welcome, L. Brick Peterson." I turned to the guys in the motorhome. I said, "We're going to have a problem up here." Needless to say, we didn't carry Traverse County.
Yeah, but
where I was known, I did fine.
Well, not only that, statewide vote. I mean, it was a cliffhanger right up to the end. Yeah. You were really close, neck and neck, all 3. It was almost the closest 3-way race. Yeah,
he was president of JC. Well, there's a JC chapter in every city.
Yeah,
he was a member of the Mormon Church. Well, there's a lot of Mormon churches throughout the state. He was involved with Amway, and there's an Amway dealer in every town. So he already had a network around the state that he could call on. I didn't have that. And he beat me fair and square. I never had a problem with that.
Yeah, well, Jim Brickley probably cut into you a little bit down in this area because he was a Detroit city councilman in the past and so forth. So then, after the election, there's a state convention, and Jim Blanchard is nominated by the Democrats, same primary that nominated Headley, and the party poobahs come to you and say, "Hey, Brooks, you got to take one for the team here. You got to run." That's
exactly what it
was.
My twin brother had a place up in Mishway at the time, and I went up there just to heal my wounds. I was tired. I was physically exhausted. It's a big state. I broke. Didn't have a from campaign sense. I never have worn a 3-piece suit since that race. I never have. I never have had I've got this aversion to a vest, and I'm up there in my brother's place, just sort of cool, and Tom Brennan. I don't know how he found me in the woods, and he wouldn't say no. And he came back the next day, and they finally, like you said,
because Tom Brennan was the lieutenant governor nominee with Headley,
and
former
we need
Supreme
you to
Court
take on Frank Kelly. You're the perfect guy for that because you're a prosecutor. Now, Kelly had been in office, I think, by that time, 112 years. There was no way in hell I was going to beat him, and I had no money. So they draft me in September, and the race is in November. So I got 60 days to take on,
Yeah, it was just almost impossible.
So I never count that as a loss.
Yeah, no, you shouldn't. Absolutely not. The greatest race you had was the gubernatorial Republican primary, and that was so close. Yeah. Just a few percentage points difference. What about capital punishment?
I was prosecutor during the 70s, 72 to 88. I think the first drive started around we're going back in history, around 76, and we're shooting for the 78 election. Yeah. And the reason I even got into it, and even though I still believe that it's an appropriate punishment for certain crimes, a young woman was kidnapped by 2 guys. I think her name was Elizabeth Mojica. Kidnapped by 2 guys, and Kyle Johnson and Jeff Quell. I can't believe I remember their names. And we brought him in for interrogation, and my chief assistant was Dick Thompson. And Dick, after going through all the advisement of rights and so forth, he said, they've admitted to the killing. Well, why'd you kill her? And the response was, quote, "We'd never seen anybody die before, wanted to see what it felt like." And I thought, when we get to that point in our society where that's a joy kill, whatever you want to call it, we kill people just for the fun of it, for the thrill of it, we ought to have a punishment that responds to the depravity of that crime. So that's my first petition drive for capital punishment. we fell short on votes, on signatures. So we didn't